Okay, this one should turn some heads as well. Christian apologetics would have you believe that the name iesos in Greek is not structured from the root of the name Zeus. And they set up an argument for it, rip it down, because they're right. The name Zeus isn't, and I say these names for educational purposes only, I would never say them otherwise, okay, but for the purpose of explanation. Zeus isn't the foundation of the structure of the name. Zeus is just a suffix, a tiny little suffix attached to the name. The name is ieso, not iesos. You place the dividing factor of isolating the meaning of the name, and you get it all wrong. They say it's just an attempt to transliterate from Hebrew into Greek alphabet the name Yeshua or Yehoshua. That is not correct. It isn't. And I'll show you why. The name of the goddess of healing in the Roman pantheon was ieso, I-A-S-O. To conjugate the female name into the masculine, it becomes ieso. US is a suffix attached that indicates an attribute of, or an offspring of, the god Zeus. That's where the Zeus part comes in. Now this is what the name means. And this is why Christian apologetics and Christians themselves can never see their way out of it. Because they just don't actually get in the mind. They don't understand in the mind at all that that's what the name actually means. No matter how many times you tell them, they'll say no, it isn't, because all it is a transliteration from Hebrew into Greek letters. The problem is that Greek is a language. It has a structure, and words have meaning, and names have meaning. So if, hypothetically, their argument were correct, that all it was an attempt to translate from Hebrew into Greek alphabet, the sound, Yehoshua, then how is it that they just so happen to accidentally, through no purpose, stumble upon and land directly on the healing son of Zeus? You see what I mean? If it was not intended, it sure is one heck of a stab in the dark that winds up having a very specific and literal direct meaning in the structure of the language itself. That's why the Christian apologetics answer cannot work. Because you right now can even look at the alphabet in Greek and the alphabet in Hebrew and take Yehoshua or Yahushua or, the letters themselves, Yod, He, Vav, Shin, Ayin, and turn around and transform, best you can, into Greek the sounds according to the letters. You could do a much better job. Look into it yourself. And better yet, don't believe me. Don't believe your preachers. Go find an ancient language scholar. There are linguists in the world, Someone who is an expert, completely fluent in Greek. Sit down and show him the name Iesos and say, hey, can you see a meaning in this? In the structure of Greek itself as a name? Can you see if there is a meaning? How much you want to bet right now? They see it. Now, I've done this myself. A guy at a Boston University I was brought to by some Catholic people I was speaking with one time. I told them, and they said, there's no way you're right, and we know just the person to prove to you that there's no way you're right. They took me to him. He was surprisingly young. He must have been a gifted genius or something, because he was surprisingly young, Asian guy. And they said, now tell him what you told us. And I broke it down. I said, ieso is the masculine conjugation of ieso, the goddess of healing, and us is a suffix indicating the offspring of, or an attribute of, the god Zeus. And his eyebrows went whooshing. And the Catholic dudes that brought me to him were staring at him for an uncomfortable length of time. And they said, and here's psychology at its optimum. He said, tell him he's wrong. This happened. Boston. And he said, no, actually, I think he's right. And then he entered into what I consider to be mental gymnastics. He said, well, yeah, but, there were people in Scripture with the suffix attached to their name of Yahoo. They weren't necessarily good people. So, I wouldn't necessarily think that, having this attached in its meaning would necessarily indicate he was of this particular, God. And here's this genius person, so programmed by religion that he tries to find a very, very, very empty and silly way out of the simple reality of the meaning of a name. And that was the only time I was able to confirm with a scholarly level type person who was completely fluent reading and writing in not just Greek, but this particular Koine form as a scholar. And he saw immediately what it meant. And back in the early 50s, and I think even from before that in the 30s, you check Christian publications themselves, dictionaries and stuff. I don't have on hand the reference material, but there was a guy in that Fossilized Customs book that showed the editions before they were amended later, censored, basically. But the original editions of certain books came right out and said the only thing it could mean is structured from ieso, the goddess of healing. This is the structure of the name itself. And so, that must be just how they saw it and was speaking it back then, being a different language. But they did recognize, is my point, the fact. That's why all of these different Christians who insist to you, no, it is not around the name Zeus. You can tell them, well, I know, that's not what I'm saying. It's around the name Ieso. The Zeus part is just a suffix, like any name in Greek back then or today or anything else. Any history teacher in high school could tell you US is a suffix and what it means in Greek. It's the name for healing, and where that power to heal came from in their pantheon of deities, that is the structure of the name. Because they would believe that if you watch Clash of the Titans, you'll see that Perseus, US, per se being whatever it was that he was from that attached to the suffix, was endowed, well, most of the demigod people were endowed with a gift from one of the gods by the order of Zeus. But in the case of Perseus, he commanded them to build items for him to use. But in most of the, like in Hercules or whatever those stories, most of them were endowed by certain supernatural gifts by his directive, and that's why their names were structured that way. Perseus, Perse, son of Zeus. You see what I mean? So these Romans they hear a story about some people talking about some things, and what was brought to him anyway was Paul stuff anyway, and so he was already way off. And so what did they get out of it? You know what? This is for us. Our God is God, not yours, or it would be the Jewish Empire, not the Roman Empire. So we'll take these events that took place as being for us, and they reinvented the entire thing, and all of a sudden you have the anti-Messiah and the name of the anti-Messiah. There are many people even within Judaism that don't know this stuff, and it's too bad because the information is available. The scholars who can prove it empirically are available. And so it's something that should be deeply researched. Thank you.